When a person looks upon the world with restless eyes, they see enemies where there are none, storms where there is only wind, and battles where there is only misunderstanding. The mind, when untrained, becomes like a river in flood, powerful but unable to see its own banks. In such a state, victory is often mistaken for the act of defeating another. Yet there exists a deeper victory, one that does not leave behind ashes of regret nor chains of pride. It is the silent victory, the strength of peace is not weakness dressed in quiet clothes. It is not surrender. It is not the absence of action. Rather, it is the presence of awareness so deep that reaction becomes unnecessary. A person who has discovered peace does not need to strike every time they are struck in words or in gesture. They see that every blow offered by another often comes from their own inner disturbance, not from true intention to harm. And seeing this, they choose not to multiply suffering. In the world, people are taught that strength is loud. Strength is often shown through dominance, through winning arguments, through proving superiority. But such strength is fragile. It depends on opposition. It survives only as long as there is someone to defeat. When there is no opponent, it becomes hollow. True strength, however, remains even in solitude. It does not need comparison. Peace is such strength. There is a silent victory that cannot be measured by trophies or applause. It is the victory over one's own anger. When anger arises, it feels like fire demanding fuel. Most people feed it with words, with actions, with memories of past wounds, but the one who understands peace watches that fire without feeding it. Slowly, the fire loses its grip. In that moment, no enemy outside is needed to be defeated, because the greatest enemy, unchecked reaction, has already been softened. Peace also teaches patience, not the patience of waiting with frustration, but the patience of understanding that all things have their own time to unfold. Just as a seed does not become a tree by force, human transformation cannot be rushed by pressure. When one learns to trust this rhythm, life becomes less of a battlefield and more of a garden. Even conflicts begin to lose their sharpness, because they are no longer seen as threats but as teachers. Many believe that to remain peaceful is to be passive in the face of injustice. But silence born of wisdom is not the same as silence born of fear. The peaceful one does not act out of rage, but out of clarity. When action is needed, it arises without hatred. When words are needed, they are spoken without poison. Such action carries far more power than any action born from anger, for it does not create new wounds while trying to heal old ones. The silent victory is also within the self. It is the moment when a person no longer seeks validation from every passing voice. Praise no longer inflates them, and criticism no longer destroys them. They become steady, like a mountain that does not move when the wind argues with it. Don's worth does not depend on the shifting opinions of others. In relationships, peace becomes the highest form of love. To love without control, without possession, without fear of loss, that is rare. Many love with clenched fists, trying to hold another being as if they were an object. But peace allows love to breathe. It allows space. And in that space, connection becomes deeper, not weaker. The silent victory in love is when two beings can exist freely, yet remain connected without chains. Even suffering changes its meaning in the presence of peace. Pain still arrives, as it must in all human lives, but it no longer defines the entire story. Instead, it becomes a passing visitor rather than a permanent resident. The peaceful mind does not ask, "Why is this happening to me alone?" but rather, "What is this moment teaching me?" In this shift, suffering loses its authority. One who walks this path does not need to announce their victory. True peace is self-evident. It is visible in the calmness of the eyes, in the softness of speech, in the absence of unnecessary conflict. It is felt even by those who come with hostility, for peace does not provoke aggression, it dissolves it. And yet, this path is not easy. The world often pulls the mind toward reaction. Old habits of pride, anger, and fear do not disappear quickly. They return again and again like waves upon a shore. But the shore does not fight the waves, it simply receives them. And in time, the waves lose their force. So too does the mind learn. The silent victory is not achieved once and for all. It is lived moment by moment. Each moment offers a choice to react or to understand, to strike or to pause, to resist or to see clearly. With each choice toward peace, strength grows, not the kind that dominates others, but the kind that cannot be shaken. In the end, the greatest triumph is not over people nor circumstances nor the world outside. It is the gentle mastery of the world within. When that is achieved, nothing more needs to be conquered. For the one who carries peace has already won a victory that no conflict can take away. True strength is silent. Not aggressive. Real strength is not shown through conflict or dominance, but through inner calm that does not depend on defeating others. True strength is often misunderstood by those who measure life through struggle, comparison, and competition. Many believe that to be strong is to win arguments, to overpower opposition, or to stand above others in every conflict. Yet such strength is fragile because it depends entirely on the presence of resistance. Without someone to oppose, it has no identity. The deeper understanding of strength reveals something far more stable and enduring: silence within the mind and peace that does not seek validation through victory over others. When a person begins to observe their own thoughts carefully, they notice how quickly the mind reacts to even the smallest disturbance. A harsh word, a misunderstanding, or a moment of disrespect can trigger an immediate emotional response. In that instant, the mind rushes to defend itself, to retaliate, or to prove itself right. This reaction feels powerful, but it is actually a loss of inner control. It is like being pulled by invisible strings tied to external events. True strength begins when those strings are noticed and gently loosened. Silence, in this sense, is not the absence of speech alone. It is the absence of unnecessary reaction. A silent mind does not mean a mute voice. It means a conscious awareness that chooses response over reaction. When someone speaks in anger, the strong mind does not immediately echo that anger back. Instead, it observes the situation as it is, without distortion. Between stimulus and response is where real strength lives. In that space, wisdom has room to act. Most conflicts grow not because of the original issue, but because of uncontrolled reactions layered upon it. One angry word becomes two become 10, and soon what could have been resolved simply turns into lasting separation. The one who embodies inner peace interrupts this cycle. They do not add fuel to the fire. Their silence is not avoidance, but prevention. It stops suffering from multiplying unnecessarily. Such strength requires deep inner training. It is not something that appears overnight. The mind has spent years learning to react quickly, to defend identity, to protect pride. Reversing this habit takes patience and awareness. At first, silence in the face of provocation may feel uncomfortable, even unnatural. The ego resists it because it equates silence with defeat. But with understanding, one realizes that not every battle deserves participation, and not every insult requires a response. Over time, the mind begins to experience a new kind of confidence. It is no longer shaken by every passing judgment or opinion. External noise loses its grip. Praise does not inflate the self, and criticism does not destroy it. This balance creates a steady foundation within, like a deep-rooted tree that remains unmoved even when storms pass through. In this state, communication becomes more meaningful. Words are chosen carefully, not to win, but to clarify. Actions are taken not to dominate, but to bring balance. Even disagreement can exist without hostility. The silent strength allows one to engage with the world without being consumed by it. Ultimately, this form of strength does not announce itself. It does not need recognition. It is felt in the calm presence of a person who no longer fights every small disturbance. It is the quiet realization that peace is not something to be earned after every battle, but something that makes many battles unnecessary in the first place. Peace is mastery over one's own reactions. The highest victory is learning to control anger and emotional impulses instead of feeding them or acting on them. Peace is often mistaken for inaction, as if remaining calm in difficult moments means a person has chosen to do nothing. In reality, peace is one of the most active states of awareness a human mind can develop. It is not the absence of life's challenges, but the presence of a steady mind that does not get swept away by them. When a person cultivates peace, they are not avoiding reality, they are engaging with it in a clearer, more intelligent way. In everyday life, the mind is constantly pulled in different directions. A single situation can give rise to multiple interpretations, emotions, and assumptions. Without awareness, these mental movements quickly turn into conflict, both within and outside. Peace interrupts this automatic chain. It allows a person to see a situation before reacting to it, like watching clouds move across the sky without becoming the clouds themselves. When peace is present, decisions become more thoughtful. Instead of reacting from fear or anger, actions arise from understanding. This shift may seem small, but its effects are profound. Many regrets in life are created in moments of impulsive reaction. Words spoken too quickly, choices made in frustration, or actions driven by pride. Peace creates space where such impulsiveness loses its power. In that space, wisdom can quietly enter. One of the strongest aspects of peace is its ability to reduce unnecessary conflict. Not every disagreement needs to become a battle. Not every difference of opinion needs to turn into opposition. When the mind is peaceful, it recognizes that people often act from their own conditioning, experiences, and limitations. Instead of immediately resisting them, there is room to understand them. This understanding does not mean agreement, but it prevents unnecessary hostility. Peace also changes the way a person experiences stress. Life will always bring uncertainty, change, and difficulty. These cannot be fully controlled. But what can be transformed is the inner response to them. A peaceful mind does not deny problems, but it also does not magnify them beyond their actual size. It sees challenges as temporary conditions rather than permanent threats. This perspective reduces suffering significantly. There is also a deep emotional freedom that comes with peace. When a person is constantly reacting to every external event, their emotional state becomes dependent on circumstances. A single insult can ruin their day, while a single compliment can temporarily elevate them. Peace breaks this dependency. It creates emotional stability, where joy and calm are not completely controlled by outside events. This does not make a person less sensitive, it makes them more balanced. In relationships, peace becomes a bridge rather than a wall. Disagree without disconnecting. It allows space for imperfections without constant judgment. Instead of trying to control others, a peaceful person focuses on understanding and communication. This creates deeper and more lasting connections, because they are not based on fear or pressure, but on mutual respect. Even silence becomes meaningful when rooted in peace. Silence is no longer emptiness or avoidance. It becomes presence without disturbance. In such silence, a person can observe life more deeply. They can listen more carefully, understand more clearly, and respond more appropriately. It is a silence that is full of awareness, not absence. Ultimately, peace is not something that removes you from life's struggles, but something that allows you to move through them without being broken by them. It does not eliminate challenges, but it changes your relationship with them. And in that change, life becomes less of a constant battle and more of a conscious journey where clarity replaces confusion and stability replaces reaction. Silence from wisdom is not weakness. Choosing not to react in anger is a conscious act of clarity and awareness, not passivity or fear. Silence that arises from wisdom is often misunderstood by those who are still learning the nature of the mind. To many, silence appears as surrender, as if the person who does not respond has lost something essential. Yet this understanding comes from a surface-level perception, where power is only recognized through visible action and spoken defense. In truth, silence rooted in awareness is not weakness at all. It is a refined strength that does not need to announce itself. When a person reacts immediately to every insult or challenge, it gives the impression of strength, but it is actually a sign of inner disturbance. The mind in that state is compelled to prove itself, to protect identity, and to defend ego. This reaction happens so quickly that it feels natural, almost automatic. But what is natural is not always what is wise. Silence, on the other hand, interrupts this automatic pattern. It creates a pause where clarity can enter before action is taken. This silence is not empty. It is full of observation. In that quiet space, a person can see not only what was said or done, but also why it was said or done. Often, hurtful words come from another person's own confusion, pain, or ignorance. When this is seen clearly, the need to retaliate weakens. The situation is no longer viewed as a personal attack, but as a moment of misunderstanding unfolding in human behavior. This shift in perception is the foundation of wise silence. Many people fear silence because they associate it with losing control of a situation. They believe that if they do not respond immediately, they will be dominated or misunderstood. But silence born from wisdom is not passive acceptance of harm. It is conscious non-escalation. It refuses to turn a small spark into a larger fire. In this way, silence becomes protection, not of ego, but of peace. There is also a deep inner discipline involved in choosing silence. The mind naturally wants expression, especially when it feels provoked. To remain silent in such moments requires awareness strong enough to observe emotion without being controlled by it. This does not mean suppressing feelings, but understanding them so clearly that they do not dictate action. The silence that follows is not forced. It is natural stillness after recognition. Over time, this practice transforms the way a person relates to conflict. Instead of being pulled into every argument, they begin to see which situations truly require response and which do not. Many conflicts lose their importance when viewed with a calm mind. Not every word deserves a reaction, and not every opinion deserves resistance. This discernment is part of wisdom. Silence also allows space for truth to reveal itself. When reactions are removed, situations often resolve themselves or become clearer on their own. Words spoken in haste can create confusion, but silence gives room for understanding to settle. It is like water becoming still so that its depth can be seen. Ultimately, silence from wisdom is not about withdrawal from life, but about engaging with life without unnecessary disturbance. It is the strength of a mind that no longer feels the need to prove itself in every moment. Instead of being driven by reaction, it is guided by awareness. In that awareness, silence becomes not absence of power, but its highest expression. Peace transforms suffering into learning pain, and challenges are seen as lessons rather than personal attacks, reducing their emotional power. Suffering is something every human being encounters, regardless of status, belief, or circumstance. It arrives in many forms: loss, disappointment, illness, separation, failure, or simply the quiet unease that arises without clear reason. Most people instinctively resist suffering. They push against it, wish it away, or blame circumstances for its arrival. In that resistance, suffering often becomes heavier than it truly is, because the mind adds layers of fear, anger, and frustration on top of what is already present. Peace changes this entire relationship. When peace is present, suffering is no longer seen as an enemy to be destroyed, but as an experience to be understood. This shift does not deny pain. It simply removes the additional burden of mental resistance. Pain may still exist in the body or mind, but suffering in its amplified form begins to dissolve. What remains is a clearer, more direct experience of reality. A peaceful mind does not ask, "Why is this happening to me alone?" because it understands that difficulty is not personal punishment. Instead, it recognizes that change and impermanence are natural parts of life. Everything that arises will eventually pass. This understanding does not remove pain instantly, but it softens the inner struggle against it. And in that softness, a space opens where learning becomes possible. When suffering is approached with awareness, it begins to reveal its hidden dimension. Every painful experience carries information. Loss teaches the nature of attachment. Failure exposes hidden expectations. Separation reveals the depth of connection. Even confusion teaches patience and humility. Without peace, these lessons remain hidden beneath emotional noise. With peace, they become visible. A mind lacking peace tends to repeat suffering because it reacts in the same way to similar situations. It avoids reflection and focuses only on escape. But escape does not end the pattern. It only delays it. Peace, however, allows a person to stay present with their experience long enough to understand its cause and effect. In this understanding, repetition begins to weaken. The same suffering does not strike with the same intensity because the lesson has already begun to take root. This does not mean that a peaceful person enjoys suffering or seeks it out. Rather, they no longer waste energy fighting reality itself. Instead of asking how to avoid every discomfort, they ask what can be understood from it. This subtle change transforms the entire inner landscape. Life is no longer divided into good experiences to cling to and bad experiences to reject. Everything becomes part of a continuous process of learning and unfolding. There is also a quiet strength that develops through this approach. A person who can remain aware during difficulty becomes less easily shaken by future challenges. They begin to trust their own inner stability rather than relying entirely on external conditions. This does not make them immune to pain, but it makes them less controlled by it. The mind becomes more spacious, less reactive, and more steady. Over time, suffering loses its sharpness. It still appears, but it no longer defines the entire experience of life. Instead of being consumed by it, a person observes it, understands it, and eventually moves through it with greater clarity. In this way, peace does not remove suffering from life, but it transforms its meaning. What once felt like a burden becomes a teacher, and in that transformation, the mind grows wiser, calmer, and more deeply rooted in understanding. Inner victory is more important than external success. The greatest achievement is stability of mind, remaining unaffected by praise, criticism, or external conflict. There is a kind of love that is often spoken about loudly, yet rarely understood deeply. Many people associate love with possession, control, or constant closeness, as if holding tightly to someone guarantees the strength of a relationship. But such love is shaped by fear, the fear of loss, the fear of distance, the fear of change. When fear becomes the foundation, love begins to lose its natural flow. It becomes heavy, demanding, and dependent on conditions. Peace introduces a completely different dimension to love. In the presence of peace, love no longer tries to bind or restrict. Instead, it learns to allow space. It recognizes that every being has their own path, their own rhythm, and their own inner world. When love is peaceful, it does not demand ownership. It respects individuality while still maintaining connection. This form of love is lighter, freer, and more stable because it is not constantly struggling to hold on. Without peace, love can easily turn into conflict. Expectations arise, and with expectations come disappointment. When someone does not behave the way we want, frustration appears. Words become sharp, emotions become reactive, and misunderstandings grow quickly. In this state, love becomes entangled with ego. It is no longer about understanding another person, but about proving who is right and who is wrong. Such love is fragile because it depends on agreement rather than acceptance. Peace dissolves this rigidity. A peaceful mind does not interpret every difference as a threat. It allows others to be as they are, even when they are not aligned with personal desires. This does not mean ignoring boundaries or accepting harm. Rather, it means seeing clearly without unnecessary emotional distortion. In this clarity, communication becomes more honest and less reactive. Relationships begin to breathe again. One of the most profound aspects of peaceful love is its patience. It understands that growth takes time and that no person is fixed in one state forever. Just as seasons change naturally, human emotions and behaviors also change. When this understanding is present, there is less urgency to force change in others. Instead, there is trust in natural unfolding. This patience reduces tension and allows relationships to develop more organically. Peaceful love also transforms how presence is experienced. Instead of constant neediness, there is appreciation for simple moments. A shared silence becomes meaningful. A small gesture carries depth. There is less dependence on dramatic expressions and more awareness of subtle connection. This makes love less exhausting and more nourishing for both people involved. When love is influenced by fear, it often creates distance, even in closeness. People may be physically near but emotionally guarded, afraid of being hurt or misunderstood. Peace removes this inner guarding. It creates safety within oneself first, which then reflects in the relationship. When a person feels internally steady, they do not project insecurity onto others. This allows trust to grow naturally. There is also freedom within peaceful love, the freedom to stay and the freedom to leave without hatred. This is not emotional detachment, but emotional maturity. It acknowledges that true connection cannot be forced. If two paths align, they move together. If they diverge, they part without resentment. This understanding reduces suffering significantly because love is no longer tied to control or fear of separation. In its highest form, peaceful love does not try to complete the other person, nor does it expect them to be a source of fulfillment. Instead, it becomes a shared space where two individuals grow without losing themselves. It supports rather than confines. It understands rather than demands. And in this understanding, love becomes not a struggle to hold on, but a calm presence that allows both closeness and freedom to exist together.